Here we go. No, we're not going to. Everything's been stubborn again this morning. Ah, dear. Well, okay. I'll take over. Let the man take over from the computer. Good morning, and this is a Mirador television. And part of the reason that it's all a bit of a flippy flu is that I'm on the run. It's all right. I don't think I'm being arrested, but as you know, those of you who follow regularly, I've been a bit homeless in the last couple of weeks. Not a very nice feeling, I may say. So next time you look at somebody who's homeless and you want to have a go at them, think twice about whether in fact they're there because they want to be there, or whether circumstance just dealt them a bad blow. Luckily, my circumstance is only just temporary, but it's bad enough not having a base, not having a roof over your head, not having a family to go home to. So do be sympathetic. But part of the problem for Mirador is that I've had to use various means of keeping us on the air, and in fact failed to do so yesterday, because in the studio everything is set up. When we go on the run, or in other words, broadcast from outside, everything goes bottoms up, I think is the word. And it just isn't as easy as it would appear when you read the manuals. And it's something we do have to master, because in our plans, starting next week, we plan to do, and particularly if it's a nice summer, to do a number of programs from outside, because Lewis has a lot of history to pass on to those who are not in the know. And strangely enough, a lot of those people who are not in the know live in Lewis. Perhaps they have only come recently, but nonetheless, they are very much unaware of the vast history that this town has. And so to do stuff from the castle and the priory, and from Cliff, and from a whole host of other places, including, I hope, inside of a pub now and again, once they open on May the 17th, is so much the better, because it does reflect the fact that this is the home of democracy. It was a strange beginning, and it started with war, with the Battle of Lewis in 1264, and it has resulted in our present situation where we got war in the House of Commons in 2021. We'll get onto that in a little while. Let's see if we can actually get something going. I mean, it's just very silly that we
Hello and welcome to Mirador Television. We are the biggest little TV in the world, based in Lewes, East Sussex in England. Our aim is to entertain and to spice things up a little. We will also keep an eye on the local politics, because let's face it, someone has to. Our programs range from stories about the local people to stories about people from all the way across the pond. Brought to you by our wonderful colleagues in New York. So why not sit back, relax with your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is Mirador Television.
Well, there we are. That's Mirador Television. And this is Keith Hayes. With a bit of a stutter and a bit of a start. But let's look at the local headlines this morning, because they, for us, are probably outdistancing what's happening in Westminster, and that's bad enough. The local opposition, and we have a very, very peculiar situation in Lewis, because we basically haven't got a governance, a party in charge with a majority. But it's a rainbow alliance, and it outdid the Conservative opposition. And the Conservative opposition are sort of the largest party, but not the largest individual party. So, or they are the largest individual party, but not combined. There's what is known as a rainbow coalition. I'm not sure that it should be called a rainbow coalition. It is an amalgam of three separate parties, plus I think an independent. Now, the opposition are saying, Isabel Linington, who is the leader of the Conservatives, that they are not given enough information, that nothing is filtering through either to them as elected representatives or to people. In other words, those who do the electing. And most of the information that's not being filtered through is by the executive, those that ain't either of the people or elected. In other words, the machinery and the people who maintain the machinery keeping it a bit rusty at the moment and not telling us all. And there are a lot of things that are going wrong. I mean, there have been wrong letters sent out about housing benefit and all sorts of other creaky things in terms of, well, I think Stephen Catlin, our man at the front of the political line, was sent a letter that said he would be able to have 52 monthly payments in paying one of his council bills. But it's a bit more serious than that, because number one, we still haven't paid our bill to the Charities Commission. I mean, basically, it's an income tax bill. And the Lewis District Council are trustees of at least two charity organisations which run the Stanley Sports Field and another park, leisure space in another part of Lewis. And they are supposed to, it's not that they haven't paid, they haven't filed. And they keep on making excuses. The latest one being PERDA. PERDA is, you don't talk about political things during elections, but that doesn't cover the county election and talking about whether we paid the charity commission or not. And we're something like 400 and some odd days in arrears. And I'll tell you, you try getting behind in your council tax, and you'll soon have a letter saying that you pay tomorrow or else they're going to haul you to court. It's quite an interesting experience being hauled to court. I mean, you probably realize now that what I do is I stick my neck out as far as I can to see what will happen. And actually, what does happen is it highlights quite often a lot of failings at the local council. But one thing that really got everybody's nose, and it was very, very silly, was that the two stalls in the precinct that sell wonderful fruit and veg, and the other plants and things for the garden, they were told to move on because they were extending the space that they took. And it was crazy. And when there was a public outcry, at long last, I'm happy to say that the council has backed down and left the two traders alone. And I think that probably we would have pulled down the district council offices if that had gone through. But it should never have happened in the first place. And then they backtrack and make all sorts of silly excuses about, oh, that should never have gone out. And really, somebody hit the wrong button on the computer. Yeah, don't tell me about those computers. But in the precinct, I'm happy to say they have been saved. They have been saved, and they are going to continue to provide the wonderful service of fruit and veg, and it is. I mean, you don't even have to taste it, just look at it. It's a wonderful array, and it's all fresh. And I'm not suggesting for one moment that others who purvey fruit and veg in the town, I don't do a good job in terms of this range and the quality of food. We're very lucky. But this is a particular, and not only that, but it's nice to go to an open stall in the precinct and pick up an orange or a banana or whatever you buy nowadays in terms of fruit. I'm particularly fond of white grapes, actually. I'm almost addicted to them. But anyway, they are still there. But The other thing that has gone wrong because somebody hit the wrong button on the computer or whatever is that the voting, the ballot papers for the county council elections, which I think are May the 6th, have sent out with the wrong information on. So people were being invited to vote for a candidate that wasn't theirs. They managed to mix up the district and the county ridings, as we used to call them, but anyway, regions, areas. So it's all had to be done again, and that's very, very confusing for a lot of people. And it could have been actually. We might have had to have a rerun of the election if we'd actually voted somebody in and turned out it was for the wrong district. So those are the things that are going wrong. And if they're consistently going wrong, then we should ask questions. Now, there is something in the system that accepts that those people on the executive might get a bit bouncy from time to time and need to be reined in. And it's called a scrutiny committee. Now, that is the hands of the politicians. But from anything that I can find out, is a scrutiny committee they're not scrutinizing much, and that they are able to be steered, as it were, by the very executive with which they're trying to be the watchdog. And in the case, for instance, of the Charity Commission failure, is it hasn't even appeared apparently on the agenda to be looked at. So how the scrutiny committee can scrutinize that, I have no idea. So there seem to be failings on both sides, and I think that it's about time, since they take a hell of a lot of our money in council tax, is that we are given some assurance that there are qualified people handling that money, that it is being paid where it's supposed to be, and that it isn't going elsewhere. Now, if I'd have asked that question even a month ago, there would have been a lot of people that said, just haze stirring the muck. But since there's an awful lot going on in Westminster that is beginning to get us very uptight now that we're coming out of COVID, is how our money is being spent and how people manage to get around spending that money, then I think that it is fair that we should ask for a really transparent situation in our local council, in our district council, so that we know that those people responsible for spending our money are spending it wisely and sensibly, and that it isn't going into pockets that it shouldn't go into. Because there's an awful lot that goes on in this town, and we want quality of life. We want the town to reflect the fact that we are decent people. And in the main, in Lewis, we are. Our crime rate isn't that great, although we are having some bounce back from the COVID situation. Yeah, but everybody is around the country. We can't be that different. But generally speaking, we, particularly older Louisians who are very, very proud of their town, there is an awful lot of good that is done. There's an awful lot of help that is given. And to see that start to wither on the vine because of the leadership is a bit unhappy. A bit unhappy. It's a bit distressing. So come on, local politicians and the local executive, and there are some very decent people amongst the local executive. I mean, it's easy to generalize about these things, but you have to when you see the collective. If collectively the council is not doing its job, then we have to say that the council, and we have to be inclusive in terms of those people involved in it, unless the rest of us aren't. And we have no power whatsoever once we've elected, and once those people have gone into the council chamber, and we certainly have no influence whatsoever over those people who sit behind a desk and behind computers and determine not only where our money will go, but where we'll go. It's a very, very difficult situation. Let's have a go and see whether we can make any of these things work this morning. We will be back. We've got our man coming in to look after our bits of equipment, and not bits of equipment, with lots of equipment. But it is important that we maintain some sort of watchdog while in some ways it's personal. I'm I probably do more on Mirador than other people do, not by choice, but because it's a small organization. It's had a bad time in COVID. It's had virtually, with a small exception from the local council, it's had very little support. And so it's been in bad shape. And we have I am proud that we've kept it going, but it means that you've had to listen to me a lot, and we have a tendency to have talking heads at the moment instead of good pictures of the things that are happening. But we're trying to set that right, and we hope that when we come back after the holiday, we'll start to have some interesting things in place for you to watch. But let's see if this just to tell people who don't know what Lewis is about, even if they are living in Lewis at the moment and they're new to Lewis, because there is a big influx of people. The face of Lewis is changing all the time, but this is what we're really about. Nobody likes anything but me this morning, and I don't think you like me particularly. Anyway, for some reason, so you're just going to have to put up with me. So let's go and take a look on the ground. Well, there we are. That's Lewis, and it is a historic town. It's an ancient town, and there is lots that have happened here over the last 1,000 years or so. And there's going to be a lot that's happening in the future as well, I am quite sure. But let's just go up to London for a moment, because the newspaper headlines this morning have got poor old Boris going over his apartment. And I'm torn. I don't know whether to feel sorry for him or to say, you silly bugger, why did you do things like that? The fact is, what he's done is he's used public money to begin with to do up, at the behest of his beloved, his apartment in number 10. And it's cost a lot of money. And then he got the party to pick up the tab because it looked as if perhaps it was naughty to use public funds. And that is deemed not to be acceptable. Now, to me, the one argument that has not been put forward by anybody, because my colleagues in the media are just licking their chops at the moment and enjoying everything like this, and particularly with his outburst where Rosencrantz and Pesto, were the original the original witnesses, and God help us if we're going to go on that. It was that he had an outburst and sort of said, "Oh, I'd rather let COVID rip through the ranks and get it over with, and not worry about the bodies piling up, if we could just shorten the whole thing." Well, you know, I have been under great pressure the last very little money to do anything with, trying to keep a business afloat, trying hard to keep me afloat, trying hard to find somewhere to live, and what happens is that you get very, very, very tense. Now, I don't know that I uttered anything that I would regret, but I might well have sort of said, to hell with the lot of you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to throw tomatoes at any passerby. I wouldn't have meant it, but in the heat of frustration and trying to get things off my back, I might well have said it. And if I did, later on, I would sit in the pub, if I could sit in the pub with my friends, and I would look at my shoes, and I would fiddle with my hands, and I would fidget, and I would be very, very unhappy that I'd done something like that. Well, I'm sure that he did the same thing, and but the mere fact that he did it with Rosencrantz and Pesto listening, it was very, very ill-advised. He should be careful about who he mixes with. As one might say, Boris, be careful who your friends are, because I don't think either of those two are your friends, and let us say anything indiscreet in front of them. But anyway, we were really talking about the fact that he spent an enormous amount of money on refurbishment. But what I want to know is, what is the difference between what he spent and the difference that would be spent anyway to maintain what is, first of all, the First Minister's residence, and also a very historic building. How much would we have spent? So let's say at the moment I can't remember the figures, but he spent 60,000, let's say, and that we would have spent 40,000 anyway. Are we really talking just about 20,000, or, as everybody who's getting very uptight about it is, are we talking about the full amount? I mean, there's lots of things that one can debate. Nobody's bothering to follow that path, as best I can see. So the newspaper headlines is Boris painted into corner, and how to get fancy wallpaper. Two of them. The Metro, interior resign. Well, the Metro have never been terribly fond of Boris ever since he was Lord Mayor of London. Oh, not Lord Mayor, I'm sorry, he was Mayor of London. Lord Mayor is a different position altogether. So I'm quite sure they calling for his resignation over this is not at all unusual. The Mail is Boris painted into a corner. There is an official probe coming up, and the Mail says that Boris could be the first PM interviewed under caution. Now, it's very interesting, isn't it, how language, not only body language, but language tries to tell you where people stand. I'm a fan of the Daily Mail, as most journalists are. It doesn't matter what your political viewpoint is. Those people that don't like the Mail don't like it for political reasons, not whether it's a good newspaper or not. But in this particular case, they really are going. They're saying Johnson could be the first PM interviewed under caution, whereas almost throughout COVID, when it was all going well and everybody could go rah rah rah, it was Boris. So Boris painted into a corner, but Johnson could be the first PM interviewed under caution. The late Bob Elphick, a giant in broadcasting, the BBC's Moscow correspondent for a long time, and the man who commented and commentated on the Prague Spring when Russian tanks went into it was Czechoslovakia in those days, and the Dubček government that had gone a little bit too far in asking for freedom. But Bob said when he first joined the BBC, all the communications that came to him would say, "Dear Elphick," just his surname. He said then they moderated it a little bit, and it went, "Dear Mr. Elphick," right? And then in his latter years is "Dear Bob." That's the way things change. Elphick, Mr. Elphick, Bob. So when you want to really show your displeasure with anybody, what you do is you use the last name, Johnson. So Johnson could be the first PM. The PM will give evidence to the electoral watchdog. That's in the eye. And I suppose that really has a lot to do with what's happening in the redistribution of seats, which has been. The Electoral Commission came to some conclusions some years ago, and nothing has been done in terms of redistributing or rearranging the various ridings. So basically, still, what you can have is you can have an MP, a member of Parliament in Westminster, if you've got 200 people in an area, and those people who've got 20,000 still only get the one MP. So they're trying to redistribute so that we're properly represented. And of course, that doesn't sit well with the political parties at all, because it means that various areas will change colour. So the electoral watchdog needs to. I suppose be under, just to make sure it's been fair. But one of the things, of course, that we really have to worry about at the moment, and it's becoming a key thing, is the sentiment is switching back to Scotland winning, or the Scottish Nats winning substantial majority in the May the 6th elections, and then demanding another referendum on whether Scotland should go independent. And the fact is, it doesn't matter which way you look at it, from an emotional point of view, or a distribution point of view, a political point of view, whatever. Is an economic point of view. Just about every expert, Scottish or not, will say, look, I'm terribly sorry, but you're going to run out of cash if you do that. So we have to accept the fact that it from a rational point of view, it's not a good deal. From an emotional point of view, that's probably what's going to carry the day. So I suppose really what we need to do is to make sure that we argue it from the emotional point of view. Anyway, that's the Times. Downing Street concerned that the paper trail to the PM's flat. Well, once again, is who paid, who didn't pay, who should pay, and so on. And this is the theme throughout all the headlines this morning. The Daily Telegraph. It's incredibly safe for two vaccinated people to meet freely. Okay, one of the headlines that isn't necessarily in the papers is that now some of the medical fraternity are saying that we have done such a good job in this country in fighting COVID that even if there is a third wave, and there is bound to be a third wave, it's unlikely that we'll have to go through the severe restrictions that we've gone through in the past. And that really is good news, because if there was anything that was going to cause social problems in this country, it was that we all go back into lockdown. And so okay, we always have to be a bit careful, but we are always a little worried about the fact that we're going to have to put up with all the garbage again. Also, there is a big worry about India, where COVID has become rampant. And it is just sweeping across the country with thousands of deaths. And it would appear that the authorities have very little power or even need to try and contain it. And that in its turn could bounce back. Oh, anything else that's on the deck in terms of the national press? Well, the Financial Times. Johnson faces formal probes into who paid for the Downing Street facelift. I mean, I've spent some time talking to more mature people in the last 2 or 3 days. And I think that after we'd talked it through sensibly, as we said, what the hell? Is this a storm in a paint pot? As I say, nobody has said how much would it cost anyway. I mean, it'd be strange, wouldn't it, if in fact it turned out that it would have cost 80,000 if it had come from the public purse, and that Boris has got it done for 60. Excuse me. But I'll have a little sip. But the fact of the matter is that quite often, if you get when I first came back to this country from Canada, and I was walking past some council houses, and a friend of mine who was a lobby correspondent in the House of Commons, and he said those are the most expensive houses in the United Kingdom, because when it's built by from the public purse, it's always far more expensive, particularly with the purchasing methods that are used, than any other way of building anything. So it could well be that if we'd have left it to Westminster to refurbish, it would have cost a hell of a lot more. Interesting. I'm not trying to defend Boris. I think he's being a silly and a naughty boy in some instances, but he certainly saw us through COVID, and he is flamboyant. And perhaps what the country needed after Mrs. May and some of the suits that have been in situ, that we needed flamboyance. We needed somebody who was a little bit colourful, who was going to get his fingers into the paint pot. That's not an opinion. It's just simply my view. A little bit, quite a lot. I'm the mouth that roared. So that's where we stand now. The weather, I understand, is if I look outside, a streaky cloud. It's going to be just a little cooler than it was yesterday, and it became cool yesterday during the day. But it was a very, very pleasant day, and because the breeze dropped, we were able to sit outside and enjoy the weather. Not as warm, but the breeze wasn't cooling us down. So there are a couple of places that are opening up. First of all, the riverside is open for. There are some nice little shops in there, a fishmonger and a butcher, and a little coffee shop and so on. And you can actually get lunch there, and you can get a beer there. It's just terrific. The coffee shops, Costa and Nero, they're both open. You can't go inside, but you can sit outside. And when it was like a very pleasant day as it was yesterday, not a bad thing to do. In fact, after this, I might just go and do it myself. We'll see. And also, if we take a look at Fuego, which is a sort of it's a continental type bistro, but I finished work very late last night, somewhere about 8 o'clock, and I dropped by Fuego, and the girl was just absolutely delightful. And I don't normally eat hamburgers, but I did. I took a burger and a milkshake, and I have to say that the bun and the meat, whatever we call it, the patty, it's a very, very nice hamburger. A very nice one, one of the best that I've ever seen. The bun doesn't get all soggy and crumble. The meat is firm and it's tasty, and I thought it was rather nice. The milkshake was pretty good, although I must say that from the milkshake that I remember, particularly the ones you get at McDonald's, it was a bit small. So that's my criticism: is it was good, but not enough of it. So that is open, and I know that Hicks and Green, that I call Wild Bill's, it is opening at the moment, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think. I'm not sure about Sunday. And it will start to open full time after May the 17th, this magic figure when all the pubs have decided to open. So that's the situation in terms of coming out of COVID that we have in Lewis. Not a bad scene, actually. Not a bad scene at all. And I have to say it. I have to say that life in Lewis was beginning to look a little better. And since I'm thinking of abandoning Lewis, I will be sorry to see it go, because I've lived here for 30 years. Okay, in that 30 years, I've taken off and lived in other places. Well, my very good wife has kept the house going. My very good late wife, I should say, kept the house going. Yes, I've dashed off to Kosovo, and I've dashed off to Russia, and I've dashed off to Africa, and a whole host of other places in between. But Lewis has been my home base, and I thoroughly enjoy being part of this community. But time moves on, and circumstances move on, and nobody thought for one moment that the lockdown, particularly the last one, was going to be as fierce and vicious as it was. So there we are. That's the town in which we live, and we've been going 35 minutes and 42 seconds now, and so I don't bore you all to death. I think probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a shorter broadcast. But first, let me tell you what's happening, because we are on the move. And the first of all, we plan to do a number of live programs. First of all, break an egg, which this is. Well, we're going to start the day. I'm going to start the day between 7:30 and 8 by bringing back Rouser Radio, which is a sort of a plug or a blog or a flog or whatever they call it. It's not true radio, but that's how you hear it on your various smart conveniences. You push a button and it sounds as if it's radio, and that will herald the day when those of you who are getting out of bed don't want to necessarily look at a screen. And then we will start at 8 o'clock, and we will go through for a couple of hours in which we will have what is called really free flow television. We will chat and we will introduce programs, some of the programs you like, and they won't necessarily always occur on the same day. So, for instance, if we can bring Fergus Wood back with his wine program, Fergus might appear twice a week, and once on a Tuesday and once on a Thursday. And the next week he might appear on the Monday and the Wednesday, that sort of thing. So you'll never know what's coming up, but it'll all be jolly good stuff. And we intend to take Stephen Catlin has been absolutely stupendous, and I'm sure that those of you who are fans of Stephen, and there are many, Stephen's ratings are extremely good when it comes to his taking a look at the local council. He's a poorly man at the moment, and he hasn't been treated best by the NHS. I'm not talking about the medical staff, I'm talking about the administrative thing. And he really doesn't know where the hell he is. And he's been alerting us to the things that are happening here. And let me just recap those. Is one, the wrong ballot papers were sent out. You could have been voting for Guy Fawkes for all I know, and it wouldn't have counted. That the people, the two greengrocers or fruiterers, veg and fruit stall, let's put it that way, and the flower stall that were given notice to move on have had that rescinded, and they're back in. And there is still no sign of payment for the money that is owed to the Charities Commission. So there are lots of other things happening, and I hope that Stephen will be back pretty soon, because he lets us know what's going on in the district councils, or all the councils for that matter, in a very, very straightforward way and in a very, very accurate way. When Stephen says something is happening, it's happening. Believe me. So, and finally, the leader of the Conservative Party has said, I don't think that we're being told as much as we should be. and it's always a part of the people in government or governance, which in this particular case is a coalition, to try hard not to let the opposition know exactly what they're doing. But this isn't that issue. What the issue is the stuff that's coming out from the executive, which is now firmly ensconced in Eastbourne, is just not good enough. This whole experiment has not worked, but there's nobody brave enough yet to try and change it. And why should you? If you've got a system that works for you, why try to fix it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, as the saying goes. The fact of the matter is, I don't know that it's necessarily helping the local community, helping Lewis, or helping people generally. And if that's the case, I would think it is incumbent upon our political class, whatever party they are, is to sit down and talk this through and make sure that we do know what's going on and that things are being done in our interest and not in the interest of the political parties themselves. And I don't care if a political party has got a particular philosophy and wants to follow a particular line of government. That's fine. That's why we elect them, when we listen to what they have to say and we decide who should be whom. But if, in fact, once they're in power, is that they stop thinking about their electorate, the people that they have sworn to serve, then it's time for us all to take a very sharp look at what's going on. Do you notice when I do that is the last few days, I looked at myself in the mirror, and on one occasion I didn't recognize myself. My God, Keith, you've grown old in a few days. But I'm going to actually get some face cream and see whether I can restore myself to my former beauty. So watch out, face cream shops. I saw in one of the, I think, Mixed Times, Lewis present, probably, some lady saying that she just can't get any help from the council. She's been asking for months, to the point where her bathroom, and she's got children, is growing mushrooms. And that is appalling if that's the case. We know that they're looking after the gardens. If it wasn't for Stephen Catlin and his little group of volunteers, nothing would be done. And nothing was done on the Western Road gardens when they were made over to the county council. There were lots of excuses, but nothing was done. And now, fortunately, Stephen has been granted the right to get his little team looking carefully. Oh, today is Bart Krasniqi's birthday. These things pop up from Facebook across my screen. And Bart Krasniqi is a cameraman in Kosovo, and a very fine cameraman indeed he is. And he has a brother who is also a fine cameraman. They're twins. And their start in life was not at all fortunate, because they were born and raised in a time of great stress when the Serbs were controlling Kosovo, and then there was a war. And they've turned out to be not only two fine cameramen, but also two fine young men. So happy birthday, Bart. Not that you'll hear this, but well, you will probably, because there are one or two people in Kosovo that I know watch us from time to time, and they'll know that I mention you in dispatches. All right. So lots of things that we need to keep our eye on locally. It's not a bad day. There are a few things coming back. You can get a pint now, if only the weather would be conducive to sitting outside. But it's not too far off now. What, about 20 days to go before we can pile back in. So come rain or snow or hail or fog or whatever, we can still grasp a pint in our hands. But will we want to? How have we changed in our society because of lockdown, because of COVID, because of the fact that we spent more than a year kept behind closed doors, more than a year not being able to do the things that we normally do, more than a year the society has gone AWOL, can't go to funerals, have a hell of a job with the doctor. Oh, by the way, I have to say once again, I really support wholeheartedly the medical staff who are at the front line of the NHS. The NHS itself is just a complete and utter disaster. I I phoned yesterday because I'd got one or two concerns about my health, and because I'm classified as vulnerable. I played the game, and if I actually make a phone call, it may impose upon them right then and there, but it probably stops them spending a good few thousand on me if I actually fall down or just can't move or whatever. Um, it, First of all, the phone call would have been 40 minutes. I was 20th in the queue, and the estimated time was 40 minutes. That's before I could even talk to a nurse. And prior to that, the all press 1, press 2, press 3 is over 3 minutes. I'm dying, but before you can tell anybody, you've got to press 1, press 2, press 3. Or if you're really dying, don't wait for the phone system. Go to the website and tell us you're dying on the website. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And then when I went up to I thought, right, I'll bypass this. I'll go up to the surgery. And because I've been going there, I'm more or less familiar with the ladies that look after the front desk, and have a very pleasant chat. And I asked to see my dedicated physician. Because I'm over 60, I'm granted a dedicated physician. Oh, no, dear. That dedicated physician had no time whatsoever for 4 weeks. So what was the point of this whole system? Thought up by some Jobsworth in a back laboratory somewhere. 4 weeks. Now, because it was pressing, I got a call from a doctor that I'd never, ever come across before, never met, didn't know. But he was very pleasant, and he was fairly thorough on the phone. So I have to say that the standard of doctor at the Southover, it's not Southover, St Andrew's surgery on Southover, is as high as ever. But the whole system is just a joke, a complete laugh. Bigger is better. Well, I think we're going to see a few bodies in the streets before they find out that in this particular case, it's not. Yes, it worked with COVID, and that was a good example of where bigger probably was better. But when it comes down to the individual, it is not. And I think that the head honcho is Dr. Jason Heath. Once again, not a bad chap, a very thinking chap, and he's working very hard towards getting us or developing one of the best medical systems that we can have. But I think that it comes a time when you have to sit down and say this simply isn't working, and there's no solution other than to go back to square one, or even go back to starting point and stay there. So a poor result as far as I was concerned. Well, there are lots of other things that I could, and I don't want to dwell on my misfortunes, just to keep a decent program going, because we've gone 47 minutes now, 48 minutes, and you've listened to me for 48 minutes. Oh my goodness me! And the videos aren't. They're not working very well this morning, are they? But let's play this one. Now, do we have to wait for a moment because it takes a little time to kick in? And suddenly it'll say, tap this if you want to.
So I can understand it fully, appreciate my standing, go out of this world and ride on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this.
Well, that was nice, wasn't it? It came in halfway through. It's all a bit of fun. It's all going to change, I assure you, next week. Because we have got our good friend Dan coming in to make sure that the computers are all put together properly. Paul Fowle has found somebody who understands the apps and what we need to make sure that we are broadcasting what we want to broadcast and how we're broadcasting it, and we're using the right pieces of software. So it's taken a little time. We got through COVID. Now we're suffering from the after effects of COVID, but I've got an excellent team, and Jane Watkins is working very, very hard on a couple of programs. Paul Fowle is sorting out his business program very nicely, and I piddle around at the edges. And I hope that our news and information show, which this is, Break an Egg, will be, it's going to be free flowing, so we can bring in guests. We can bring in you if you want to make a comment, if you want to engage in debate with us, all those sort of things. That's what our young Turk, who understands the software required for running this sort of operation, will install for us. So it'll be a whole new look, and eventually give us a month, and we hope that from that we'll be able to develop our own programs here. One where we're going to open a pub, and two, we want to take a look at a day-to-day life in a village, all sorts of things that may be of interest to you, but also interest to the people 8 or 10,000 miles away who can see us through the streaming channels, Roku, Amazon, Apple, etc., etc. And we hope that we can reintroduce that, because they do cost. We do need money for it, and we've got to try and raise some, either by laughing and giggling, or by trying to get some investors, or whatever. But we are here. We're here to stay. We're developing, and I hope that you will join us next week, and the week after, and the week after. We're designed for you to tap in. You don't need to be with us for more than 5 minutes. And also, we then are recorded on all social media, so you can look at us at any time of the day. The only thing is that if we start early in the morning and we're sitting shivering in the studio, you have to understand, if you're watching at midday and it's blazing sun, is that it's not actually time real. That this is time real, and I'm happy to say that Mirador Television has survived, and it's important that it did survive. And now it's gearing itself to try and bring back the sort of service that it was giving you prior to lockdown. So for the moment, it's 52 minutes past 8 o'clock. Is it? Is that right? Yes. It's 25 minutes past 8 o'clock. We're not very far off having completed the hour. So forgive us if we just truncate a little with 5 minutes this morning, mainly because my voice is beginning to dry up, because I've had to do most of the talking. So let's see whether we can say goodbye in a nice styled way, or whether in fact we need to get off pretty quickly. Let's give it a try. Okay. Who knows? But anyway, I'll say to you, toodle pip, have a good day. Have a very good day. And let's hope that it will see the beginning of a rebirth in our society, with nice weather, nice restaurants, nice pubs, nice even simple benches to sit on. And that way, we most certainly can look forward to a summer of fun and games, which we need after the harsh 12 months that we've been through because of COVID. And we are a nation that has seen it off. And whether you love him or hate him, Mr. Marmite, Boris had a lot to do with the fact that he stood by when other people said, come on, give way. People want to go back to the beach. And he said, no, let's stick it out. And by sticking it out, it looks as if we may have demolished it. Not forever, any more than we have the common cold or influenza. But we've demolished it enough to get back to some sort of civilized way of living. All right, you are. Well, nothing is working again this morning, but there we go. We'll say goodbye, and we'll be back with you tomorrow, and look forward to that. Toodle.